In this video, I'm going to be putting this jumbo LDV 400 through its paces. I'm really excited about this.
Hub Nut, sponsored by Lancaster.
So here we go, let's have a nose around. This is an LDV 400 and I'll get into a bit of the history about these vehicles once we're underway. But in short, it's a Peugeot 2.5 litre turbo diesel engine and a Peugeot gearbox, lifted straight over Peugeot 505. So it shows you how over engineered those were, but they're entirely happy in a 3.5 ton LDV. And the LDV began life as the Sherpa in the mid 70s, and this is the larger bodied version that arrived in about 1983, I think. Wider, longer, but still with many of the same styling cues. And I particularly like this late facelift with the slatted grille and even the headlamps around. I just think it's a really smart design. And look at the wipers. I know these have been swapped over just for me because they were the wrong way round, but you've got a cranked arm on the driver's side and a straighter one on the passenger side. And yeah, to a wiper geek like me, I just found that interesting. Believe it or not, I had a poster on my bedroom wall of one of these and the smaller 200, which is closer to the original Sherpa in size. I just think it's a really smart looking van. So this is quite a large one. It's got the double rear axle, double wheel, and got a sliding door, huge roof on it. I'm not sure they even came that high from the factory. It's had a lot of money thrown at it. There we go, 400 series turbo. I shall find out what the stats are on the engine, but my guess is about 90 brake horse. And yeah, an amount of torque. Very simple styling, some excellent branding. The door is clearly from a later LDV. That's an LDV Convoy door. That was the final facelift of these models that came about the year this one was made. This is a very late 400. We've got the exhaust sticking out just ahead of the front wheel, simple leaf springs at the back, and even simple leaves at the front. It's a beam axle, I think, on these. You can kind of see it under there. There's the beam going across. All very, very simple. A proper old steering box, and this is just how they were. It was designed to be a very simple vehicle. Remember where the bonnet pull is. It's probably going to be on the passenger side, which is slightly unforgivable. Oh no, there it is. That doesn't feel entirely open, but would have been unforgivable to have it on the passenger side in a British designed vehicle. Yeah, might have to come back and look at bonnet. I think it's one of those that's going to be a two-person job to lift, so we'll leave that well alone. So shall we explore inside? Look, double the hub nut. So this van belongs to sorry, it's the handle at the back, there we go, belongs to the chap. I should have asked whether it was Niall or Neil. I always get the two wrong, Niall being the Welsh spelling of Neil. But he runs LDV Vans and Converts on Facebook. Well worth checking that group out. Lots of brilliant advice. But I don't know much about campers, but this is quite a smart one. I mean, look, we've got a nice hob there. We've got an Everspasher heater, which also does the hot water. We've got solar panels on the roof, Siemens ones, very expensive. There we go, some voltage coming in today. We've got an oven, well, that's quite fancy. Big extractor fan. Oh, we've even got a toilet up here at the back, and a little cover for the rear doors. I'm not sure why that's there. I think that's just extra storage. And a little porthole window, very sweet. Even a little shower, so you can have a shower while you dump. There you go. Does life get any better? I don't know if that opens or not. Oh yes, it does. That's more storage. Storage, always the problem with vans like this. Oh, that's quite neat, isn't it? T, present and correct. Two different types. Always a good idea. And having, yeah, cupboards that lock. All very sensible. So I mean, you can see the height in here from the fact that that's the cab roof down there. But if we look inside, got a nice simple gear lever just thrust straight up from the floor. My backpack in the way as ever, and the sort of dials and general layout you'd recognise from any sort of 1980s Rover product. That binnacle was also used in things like Metros and Montegos, and even London taxis used the same dials. And the window winders, everything's manual. We got those famous Allegro stroke Marina door handles, also fit to MGBs, Land Rovers, Range Rovers, all sorts of vehicles. But as of enough touring about the vehicle, I think we should take it for a drive. These front seats do spin, but I don't know how they do that, and to be honest, I'm not sure it's going to add to the experience even if I show you. So we'll get the camera set up and go for a poodle. That's brilliant. The owner has just messaged me to give me this little tidbit. Use the cork to hold the bonnet pull open, so you can actually open the bonnet. Perfect. So there we go. That is the diesel engine, 2.5 litre indirect injection. Look, you got immediate access to all the injectors. There's the fuel pump down there. There must be a tiny turbo hiding down here somewhere. There it is. There is the tiny turbo. I mean, it's almost minuscule. It's hilarious. But one of the big bonuses of these vans is that they are so simple. So they're old-fashioned, but they're very simple. And these Peugeot engines, I mean, hardy as anything. They throw a fair bit of oil down because they tend to get a bit leaky. But yeah, wonderful motors. And we shall now go for a drive. Remember to move the cork. There we go. That should be bonnet latched. I'm just going to double check that, because if that pops up while we're driving along, it would not be fun. There we go. Apparently it's 30 degrees according to the temperature display. I can see why I was told to ignore that. Proper old school diesel engine, but actually quite refined, I think, for a big old 4-pot diesel. Oh, I used to have an LDV 400 beaver tail at a time when I thought it would be fun to do vehicle delivery as a business. I was entirely wrong in that. But it was a lovely old truck, apart from the fact it didn't have power steering. So this is much quicker, so less arm twirling, and much lighter. That's us at 30. They're not rapid vehicles by any stretch of the imagination, but enough torque that you think they could probably pull themselves up the side of a house. And the ride isn't very refined because it's just simple leaf springs. But yeah, I don't reckon it's all that bad. The driving position is lovely. Everything is straight ahead of me. Visibility is good. Nice big side windows. Huge windscreen. And yeah, we can do wipers. Look at that. Must be a French wiper relay. Maybe that's from Peugeot as well, because they always seem to do 1 or 2 wipes too many. But these vans were very popular with the post office. I'm not sure if that was blind loyalty or if they just liked the simplicity of them. I mean, there's certainly no computer control here. It's 100% mechanical. So let's try and talk a bit about the history while we try and find some more interesting roads. The Sherpa began life in the mid-70s, but the actual structure of the cab goes back even further to the Morris J4 van. Effectively, the Sherpa is a J4 but with a bonnet. And so the Sherpa was a Leyland product. Morris, of course, ended up being part of British Leyland, and kind of hived off into the truck arm of the business. But by the early 80s, when the Sherpa was sort of facelifted, it was briefly sold as a Morris, and there was even a Metro van sold as a Morris, and the last of the Minis as well, the pickups and vans, I think, were also Morrises for a time. But then that was very quickly reorganised, and the Sherpa became a freight rover, part of the Land Rover side of British Leyland. So freight rover within Land Rover that made the Range Rover. Are you confused yet? And then the range expanded with the launch of the Freight Rover 300 in, I think, 1983, which was the van we're in today, pretty much. It was facelifted when, let's try and get my head around this. Freight Rover was hived off in 1989 when British Aerospace bought the Rover Group, but the van bit was hived off to merge with DAF vans in the Netherlands. No, it was slogging up at Inford apparently. And around that time, the 300 was facelifted and became the 400 with the straight slats on the grille, or the horizontal slats, and the smaller one was the 200. And unfortunately that situation only lasted until 1993, so it was only 4 years of Leyland DAF before DAF went bankrupt, and there was a management buyout. A team was formed of the managers Leyland DAF in Washwood Heath, Birmingham, where these vans were built, and they managed to save the day. They set the company up as an independent company, and it was that company that I did my college work experience when I briefly thought I'd be an engineer and tried doing a BTEC National Diploma in engineering, until I realised how rubbish I was at it. So I went and did my work experience at LDV Vans, and I would have put binnacles together like this one and the wiper spindles until I decided that really this wasn't teaching me very much about engineering at all. I hadn't gone to college to learn how to work on a production line, so I cut that one short, and then not long after that decided engineering was not for me. But when I was on my work experience, I saw the prototypes for the Convoy and Pilot, which were the replacements for the 200 and 400. They realised they had to update things, and they got Ogle in. Ogle designed many a Reliant, including the Scimitar, but I don't think it was Tom Carron's work. They put a different front on, different really ugly wipers, and slightly different styling on the rear doors. And I mean, to all intents and purposes, they were unchanged. It was just a really mild facelift on what was by then a very old design. Right, it's a tight turn. Test the turning circle a bit. Oh, that's pretty good, isn't it? Blimey. Of course, the last one of these I drove was my Beaver Tail, which had a longer wheelbase, so that, yeah, you had to thread that one about the place a bit. But I went all over in that van, and it was absolutely brilliant. It never let me down. The exhaust system completely fell off it once, which made no difference at all to how it sounded or drove. But yeah, fair play to anyone who does vehicle delivery for a business. That is not an easy way to learn your living. I digress. The Convoy came along as the facelifted version. They dropped the Peugeot engine after a couple of years and fitted Transit 2.4s, I think they were, instead. So you could buy a Transit van, or you could buy a rival, which was much more old-fashioned, with the same engine, if you so desired. And quite a lot of people did. The post office certainly did. These were also used as ambulances for a time, with V8 engines, often with a 4-speed ZF gearbox, I think. I tried to think what the fuel consumption of those is like. Riot vans were another one I remember well from my childhood. I think the EAA used them for a time as well. I remember them being painted in their distinctive yellow with a green bottom at the factory when I was there. But sadly, you know, ultimately the company wasn't able to evolve enough, and they tried to launch the Maxus, which was a joint development with Daewoo, but then Daewoo went bust, and it all got very sad. And I think 2006 they launched the Maxus, and they stopped making these older vans in 2008, which is quite remarkable. That's quite a good innings. But eventually LDV would die, and the remnants were sold off, and they're now made in China. So that's the very long, very boring, very complicated history of these LDV vans, but it's lovely to be in one again. I've just missed the boost there, so I'm going to have to go back to fourth. It's actually quite a nice, precise gear change. That's not bad at all. Yeah, I can see why people like these. They have a very simple charm. And after all, how refined do you want your van to be? And how fast do you want it to be? We've seen with Mercedes Sprinters what happens if you make a van fast. I mean, they are the quickest vehicles on the motorway when they're not falling over. But to be fair, the second generation Sprinters don't seem to fall over as much as the early ones. Whereas this is really wide, so I don't think this is going to be falling over anytime soon. I know these will actually barrel along at 70 very merrily, because my Beavertail often for hours at a time. Certainly this is a lot better than the last LDV I drove. If you've seen my video on the LDV Pilot, that's the final facelift of the 200, the smaller van design. And yeah, I could look at the road as I was driving along in that. Recommend you go and search that out. I could provide a link. That's what the young kids do these days, isn't it? I think we're going to go and drive straight up into the Rhondda. That's where we are, down in South Wales. Got blanking plugs everywhere. Just got a fog light switch there. That's all we've got. A few extra switches for the interior lights. Digital clock. You can almost see the time on. Let's test the legendary handling. It makes a lot of noise when it goes over bumps, but I'm not feeling those bumps really. It's all done by about 3,500 revs. That's a proper old school diesel engine. The steering's actually really nice. I mean, it's a good old simple steering box, and I believe there are kingpins as well, so it's ancient technology, but it works. And for some reason these 400s feel a lot nicer to drive than the Convoys. And I'm not just saying that because I don't like the windscreen wipers on the Convoy. I think we shall stop here for some view admiring. There we go. I'm letting her tick over after a big climb like that. You don't turn a turbo diesel off if the turbo's been working. Just see the solar panels up on the roof. But yeah, what a spot, eh? Almost makes me want to get the bed out, or at least the kettle. So there you go. That was the LDV 400 here in fine camper form, here in beautiful South Wales. I hope you've enjoyed our little run out. I still love the styling. Just look at it. It's lovely. And yeah, I shall say thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe before you go. And I shall see you in a future video, driving something else, or playing with something else, or doing stuff. Farewell. This is the first time I've used fridge cam. I hope you're enjoying it.